Hey, welcome in. Welcome into the Teal Shirt Report podcast. Oh. Man, that coffee is outstanding, JC. My goodness. Well, the executive vice. Well, we know who the executive vice president of football operations are, or is Tony Baselli. Tom Coughlin had that title at one time. The last time the Jacksonville Jaguars went to the AFC Championship game back in January of 2018. But what I was actually trying to say, I actually said executive vice president, but I meant to say the executive producer of this podcast. All of a sudden, JC is telling me, "Man, Scott, you haven't done an episode in a week or over a week." So now here we are. Jaguars Draft Bust Part 5. And we got some good news too. Training camp is open. Preseason games are getting ready to get kicked off. There's already been the Hall of Fame game. It was a pretty good game with the Arizona Cardinals. And Carson Beck, Jacksonville, Florida kid, played well in the Hall of Fame game. And looks like he may get a shot at the next level. Who's a starter in Arizona? Brissett. But Carson Beck is there too. So we'll see what happens in that regard. Talking about Jaguars draft bust, but keep in mind, we got a lot of good news too. We've been talking Jaguars all-time draft bust. I mean, the franchise has been around for 31 years. I've been around for all 31. We've been doing the podcast since about mid-January of 2020. So this is like I believe our 7th year of the podcast. Now we've gotten on YouTube for nearly 2 years now. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Training camp is underway. You know, there's good news with the Jaguars, but still with the current Jaguars, there's injuries. The offensive line is having some injuries. I know Cole Van Lanham has started out on the PUP list from really an injury he got. You know, and I want to talk to Gaylor more about the Cole Van Lanham injury, because he signed a contract to be the left tackle. Then he got hurt in the last game. I said, get him out of the game. And he stayed in the game just a little bit too long and got hurt. Am I blaming somebody for not taking him out? Well, probably at the time I was. I think Gaylor might have asked me, hey, would you take some of these guys out of the game? And I said I would. And he got hurt before they got him out of the game, Van Lanham. And that caused him actually to miss a playoff game in which the Jaguars lost to the Buffalo Bills, executive producer JC. So training camp is upon us. It's August the 11th. The number 11, one of my favorite numbers. Steve Spurrier wore number 11. Marquise Lee wore number 11 with the Jaguars. Certainly his career was curtailed by injuries. Great guy. Gave it his best. Threw a touchdown pass to Brother Bortles. It was a wide receiver touchdown pass to Brother Bortles. No, Marquise Lee is not in the discussion as one of the busts. And that's not honorable. That's dishonorable to be a draft bust, right? I got the top 3. I've whittled it down to 3, and there's some dishonorable mention guys below the 3 that we'll talk about. The injuries across the offensive line are plentiful. McCary was out. Patrick McCary, the right guard. Cole Van Lannon is out. Walker Little, who you say, well, he can play left tackle, and all of a sudden he's out. Pregnan, the third round, draft pick, was out. Now I think he's back in. So there's definitely some injuries across the offensive line for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we definitely want to bring you up to date on some of the things going on. Hot weather continues. Highs today around 94. Just a slight chance of rain, and over the next 24 hours, probably the most we can expect is maybe a 30% chance of rain. Although a little over a week, we've had over 2 inches of rain in the Jacksonville, Florida. The injuries. Jaguars suddenly have a major offensive line injury problem at and during training camp. The Jacksonville Jaguars, and I looked at an article from Black and Teal, an article that was written by Carlos Sanchez. His Patrick McCary and Cole Van Lannon, as we alluded to a moment ago. If there's any good news, it could be that they have more than enough depth to overcome their absence. But that may no longer be the case after a sudden rash of injuries. Emmanuel Pregnan, had an injury, but I think he's back now. Jags lost Walker Little, who essentially is the number 2 left tackle now. Cole Van Lannon on the PUP list means you're basically unable to perform, right? You've got, some guys that are out. Chuma, I can never say this guy's name right. Chuma Edoga. Maybe I got close. And when you factor in that rookie Garrett DeGorio is on the physically unable to perform list, there's a bunch of guys on that. The Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line, they're quickly running out of offensive linemen. Now, this gives an opportunity for guys that really didn't get much of an opportunity last year, and they got to step up. And right side, Wyatt Millum, Anton Harrison, basically your starting right tackle. Ezra Cleveland, basically your starting left guard. Robert Hainsey, the starting center, all appear to be healthy. And all 4 of these guys will tentatively start during the 2026 season. But waiting for Van Lannon, Patrick McCary. And when they talk about Wyatt Millum being able to start, well, he didn't play much last year. He's going to have to really prove it. He was a guard drafted last year in the 2025 draft, somewhere in that 3rd round. After the Jags had traded up, and then traded away the 2nd round pick. And then the next year, which was this year, they lost the 1st round pick. And that was all in regard to the trading up for Travis Hunter. So the Jaguars cannot afford to suffer any more offensive line injuries at training camp, and they got to get some of these guys hurt back. And when they start getting the players back, then you're going to see, I think, a fairly deep offensive line. Without Cole Van Lannon and Patrick McCary, the Jaguars are missing 2 guys that ideally you would say are going to be starters. I mean, Cole Van Lannon was impressive most of last year to the point where I almost called him Badstone. I got that from my executive producer, JC. But James Gladstone, the GM, inked a new contract for Cole Van Lannon basically to become the left tackle. Where does that leave Walker Little? Well, he played some guard. When Cole Van Lannon got hurt. Walker Little goes back to left tackle, and he's got a pretty good contract too. It's going to be interesting to see how the contracts shake out, who makes this 53-man roster. I think the Jaguars practice squad may end up being pretty impressive, actually. So that's some of what's going on, with the, offensive line for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's not a pretty sight because you got players hurt. Seems like almost half of them are hurt right now across the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line. So you got preseason games coming up. New York Joe said, hey, the Jags are going to be playing the Saints. And we know it's just preseason, but it's great to put the pads on and actually play a game. Trevor Lawrence has looked pretty good in training camp. They've got some good, positive, glowing results. I see this interview with Liam Cohen, and he's talking about Parker Washington is the first guy that shows up in the morning at the facility, like 5:30 in the morning. That's impressive. Jaguars are deep at wide receiver and even more deep at defensive back. Forsade Alakun may be as close to a Pro Bowler as the Jaguars have at linebacker. And number 51, Ventrell Miller, as I called it last year, Parker Washington was kind of one of my breakout guys last year for the Jaguars. And without a doubt, he was a breakout player, had a breakout season in 2025. You might be able to say the same thing with linebacker number 51, Ventrell Miller, moving into his fourth year. I know his first year, he missed the entire season. I think he got hurt in the preseason in his rookie year, as I recall. So that's some of what's going on. Preseason games are coming up, but the Jags, it seems to me like the main injury focus right now is the offensive line. I've heard some good things about the defense matching up. Probably gets the number 2 offense of the Jaguars, but you get them out there in preseason and that, in a first quarter situation against the Saints or the other teams that they play. I think they've got 3 preseason games. We'll see how they do. Preseason doesn't mean as much. Preseason really doesn't mean as much as it used to back in the day. There was a time when NFL teams played as many as 6 preseason games, 14 regular season games. Now it's a little different. It's 3 preseason games and 17 regular season games. So that list of, by the way, the Jumbo Shrimp did, before we talk about the Jaguars draft bust, the Jumbo Shrimp did get a win on Sunday. They certainly did. Chance of rain, bear in mind, is like 30% or less for today. Slight chance of rain today, but about a 30% chance of rain developing over the next 24 hours. And we have gotten, over 2 inches of rain in the past 8 or 9 days, in the past 8 days or so here in the Jacksonville, Florida area. Right now, 75 degrees. We're going to see clear to partly cloudy skies and hot. Drink the liquids. Slight chance of rain, very hot. High temperature near 94. Lows 75, basically. That's what our temperature is now early in the morning on August the 11th. Clear to partly cloudy, very hot, slight chance of rain. Hot high temperatures near 94, low around 75, and not much of a breeze. We've had a lot of breeze. We've had a lot of breeze and a lot of wind over the past several months off and on. But the wind's dying down some out of the west at about 3 to 8 miles per hour. That's basically your Big J report. Weather report update up in North Georgia. The Jumbo Shrimp won up in Gwinnett. Jumbo Shrimp with a 4-0 win over the Gwinnett Stripers. And that game was delayed, I think, around the 6th inning. And the Jumbo Shrimp held on and won the game 4-0 on Sunday, August the 9th of 2026. The Jumbo Shrimp, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, are now 57 and 55 overall. That information comes to us from BigJReport.com. If we take a look at the draft bust, I have got this thing down to 3. The top, well, should you say top 3? You can't say top. You can't say top with draft bust. You got to say these are let's say it this way. These are the three biggest draft busts in Jaguars history. Number one, R.J. Soward. He essentially played 1 year. He was like suspended for years 2 and 3, and he only really played, I guess, 1 year in Jacksonville. He was a late first-round draft pick, 29th overall. In my opinion, the biggest draft bust, and the problem with R.J. Soward, man, he got in Tom Coughlin's. What do you have to say about that? R.J. Soward got in. This was years ago, of course. Years and years ago, when Tom Coughlin was picking the draft picks and picked R.J. Soward late in the first round, what surprised me because I didn't see R.J. Soward really listed in too many first-round mocks. So this was a cute pick by Coughlin. He's trying to outwit people, and he did on most of his draft picks. Had some good draft picks. Tony Baselli, Fred Taylor, two of the biggest draft picks. Aaron Beasley, great defensive back on the defensive side of the ball. But then now the bad news, the draft bust. R.J. Soward was the top guy. Derek Harvey was probably number 2. Derek Harvey played 4 years in the league, 3 years in Jacksonville, went to Denver, and did absolutely nothing in his 4th year when he went to Denver. Derek Harvey, and listen to this now, Derek Harvey was not 29th overall like R.J. Soward. He was the 8th overall pick in the 2008 NFL Draft and is widely regarded as one of the Jaguars' most costly and disappointing first-round selections. Derek Harvey. And he was obviously overpaid, right? So, that's some of what goes on. These, it's called earning a dubious distinction. You take a look at the draft bust for the Jacksonville Jaguars. R.J. Soward's got to be number 1. Derek Harvey, I got him at 2. And at number 3, all of a sudden, I really, quite frankly, at number 3, I've got Justin Blackmon. I did some research on Blackmon, and all of a sudden, I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, man, he only played 20 games. I was thinking he played more games than that. 20 games, got 6 touchdown catches. So he couldn't be the biggest draft bust, but I got him at 3. And I think what happened, I really think what happened with Justin Blackmon is we were kind of teased by Justin Blackmon. Do you know what I mean? We were kind of teased by Blackmon because he got suspended, but he never come back. He never did come back. Everybody said, when Blackmon comes back, man, we're going to be good. But he never really came back. So that was, part of the problem, obviously. He never came back, but he kind of teased us in the, I guess, thinking long term that he's going to come back. And a lot of Jaguars fans might have thought, hey, this guy played more games than we thought, but it was only 20 games, 6 touchdown catches. So that is some of what's going on. I think the internet is kind of slowing down for me, so I hope we get this entire podcast in. But these are basically you can't say these are the top draft busts. No, you have to say it in a way. These are the 3 biggest draft busts in Jacksonville Jaguars history. Derek Harvey, was coming in they wanted him to, sack the quarterback. He didn't get too many sacks. Harvey got 8 sacks in his 4-year career. I think he got 3.5 his very first year, as I recall looking at the research. So he's a draft bust. He's number 2. He's number 2 on our list. And that's kind of a shame because when Derek Harvey was picked, everybody, well, not everybody, but most people were excited, that he was going to be the guy. Or he was going to be, you invest in a player. You invested in Justin Blackmon high in the draft. You invested in Derek Harvey. R.J. Soward was an investment late in the first round. To land Derek Harvey, the Jaguars traded 4 draft picks to the Baltimore Ravens. Is that right? And then they traded up to get Justin Blackmon. These are the 3 biggest draft busts, without a doubt. There's some dishonorable mentions. You can't say honorable. You could say dishonorable mentions. R.J. Soward is number 1. Derek Harvey. Did I call him Howard? Let's get his name right. If we're going to make him a draft bust, let's make sure we get the name right. Derek Harvey, right? Derek Harvey. And he was a terrible draft bust for the Jacksonville Jaguars. There was no doubt about it. I think Ventrell Miller's a guy that, wearing number 51, I think this guy could be the 2026 version of Parker Washington. I think Ventrell Miller, I think he's got a chance to have a breakout season at linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I really do. There's some other players too. I find out stuff. People are watching these films. You see videos, podcasts emerge where LaQuinn Allen is being called one of the better blocking running backs, and he's the backup behind Brayshaw Tootin, but they'll both play a lot. And LaQuinn Allen plays on, some special teams too. So that's some of what's going on. There's other names of draft bust that you would say. Again, the good picks: Fred Taylor, Tony Baselli, and Maurice Jones-Drew, and even Mercedes Lewis. Those are 4 of the best Jaguars draft picks. But then you talk about the biggest number 2, Blackmon. Justin only played 20 games, got 6 touchdown catches. And I think the internet's having we're experiencing some problems with the internet this morning. But there's other guys coming up that we're going to talk about. I haven't got them in a specific order yet. They've got R.J. Soward 1, Derek Harvey 2, and Justin Blackmon 3. Some of the dishonorable mentions that we'll talk about, but we haven't really got them in an order. We haven't really got them in an order yet. And I'm having to clear my screen a little bit now because it got very, very busy with some of the stuff I'm looking at. So some of the dishonorable mentions coming up are going to be guys like Luke Jokel, Matt Jones, John Gaylor, and I even discussed what's the guy's name? C.J. Henderson. The late first? He was an early first round pick by Codwell, but he's still in the league. He went to the Carolina Panthers. Now he's with the Atlanta Falcons. Defensive back. Jaguars had him. They drafted him fairly early in the first round. But this guy might be a nutcase. But he's hung around. He's hung around the NFL for a while now. C.J. Henderson with the Atlanta Falcons. He was drafted by the Jaguars. He got traded to Carolina. He's now with the Atlanta Falcons. So, he's been in the league for a while now, right? So C.J. Henderson out of the University of Florida, all SEC cornerback, even early in his Florida Gator days. Let me make sure I pull up the draft information on C.J. Henderson. I get some of these names, it gets confusing sometimes. Okay, so C.J. Henderson was drafted by the Jaguars. He's 27 years old. He's now with the Atlanta Falcons, but he was drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And let's pull up the information on C.J. Henderson. Now, he's still playing football. Another guy that's maybe in a similar state might be Taven Bryan, although Taven Bryan played longer for the Jaguars, certainly, than C.J. Henderson did. Henderson was drafted in 2020, played with the Jaguars into 2021, was traded to the Carolina Panthers in 2021. C.J. Henderson played with Carolina from 2021 to 2023, went to the Houston Texans in 2024, Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024, Atlanta Falcons in 2025, and is still with the Falcons in 2026. He's a cornerback. He's 27 years old, born in Miami of Florida, played for the Florida Gators from 2017 to 2019. Dave Caldwell liked him. Keep in mind that draft, when Dave Caldwell drafted, C.J. Henderson, and that was the COVID year. That was in 2020. It's the same year. I believe it's the same year that Dave Caldwell drafted Lavon Chason later in the first round. He liked both these guys, C.J. Henderson and Lavon Chason. But these are a couple of guys that are kind of like, they're not complete draft busts because they're not in the top 3, but man, they're going to make the list. Some of these guys are going to be on the top 10 when we finally get the list completely put together. So it looks like the podcast is still running okay at the present time. 27 minutes in, JC. I want to thank my executive producer. We had a long talk about the season. I really think this Jaguars team, I think they got a shot at an AFC title, but they got to stay healthy. A lot of things got to fall right. Preseason games coming up. This offensive line has got to get healthy. Really got to get healthy. When you talk about concerts around the area, we do talk about concerts. You can go to bigjreport.com in the Neighbors 2 section, and we'll keep adding stuff up there. This is a pretty good show, and I've been hearing a lot about it with Squeeze, Adam Ant, and Haircut 100. Pretty good lineup. Squeeze, Adam Ant, and Haircut 100 on Tuesday evening. This one's coming up on August the 18th in about a week. Again, a pretty good lineup. Squeeze, Adam Ant, and Haircut 100 on Tuesday evening, August the 18th of 2026 at 6 o'clock p.m. at the St. Augustine Amphitheater in St. Augustine, Florida. Boss Gags is going to be in St. Augustine, too, at the St. Augustine Amphitheater on Wednesday evening, October the 7th of 2026 at 7 o'clock p.m. I heard Mad Max. I think it was kind of in his – I think it was like in his long play stuff after his regular Mad Max mix on Wednesday nights. I heard him play – I believe he played Lowdown by Boss Gags. Great song. And again, Boss Gags will be in St. Augustine, Florida at the St. Augustine Amphitheater on Wednesday evening, October the 7th of 2026 at 7 o'clock p.m. Go to bigjreport.com. Check out the Neighbors 2 section. You'll find links to Mad Max's show on Wednesday night and JC's In the Pub show on Thursday nights in the Neighbors 2 section at bigjreport.com. Again, in the Neighbors 2 section. And we'll be updating the concerts. There's just a couple of concerts we wanted to mention that we've got in our concert listings at bigjreport.com. in the Neighbors 2 sections. Again, our 3 biggest draft busts We talked about some guys that are considered for the list. You know, the Luke Jokels of the world, Matt Jones, C.J. Henderson. But now and Taven Bryan, the thing about Taven Bryan and C.J. Henderson, they're still in the league. They're still playing. They're good enough to keep playing. That's why they're not in this top three. C.J. Henderson's with the Atlanta Falcons. Last I heard, Taven Bryan was still on the Baltimore Ravens roster. And these guys have been in the league, for quite a number of years now. They're both C.J. Henderson and Taven Bryan. They're both going to get the NFL retirement. So they're going to keep making money from the NFL for years to come. Luke Jokel played 5 years in the league, 4 in Jacksonville, 1 in Seattle, and then he was done. So I haven't got them all pigeonholed exactly as who the biggest draft busts are, 1 through 10. No, but I've got 1 through 3. R.J. Soward 1, Derek Harvey 2, Justin Blackmon 3. Justin Blackmon he had us fooled. He had some, he certainly had some problems. He had some, some life problems, substance problems, drinking problems, as I understand. I don't know what the latest is on Justin Blackmon now. Maybe I should look that up for the next podcast. What's he doing now? He's not playing NFL football. He only played 20 games, 6 touchdowns in 20 games. But I think for a lot of Jaguars fans that remember watching Justin Blackmon, I remember a long touchdown pass from Blaine Gabbert to Justin Blackmon against the Rams. I think it was in St. Louis, back when the Rams were still in St. Louis. But everybody said, Blackman's going to be back. So you had this feeling of, he's going to be back. So I think there's a lot of people, Jaguars fans, that think, man, he played more than 20 games. That's all he played, a season and a half. Or maybe a little under a season and a half, but 20 games, 6 touchdown catches, and a highly disappointing career. He never developed a career of any length because of the suspension. Same thing happened with R.J. Soward. He got suspended for 2 years. He only played with the Jaguars for 1 season as a late first-round pick. So I can't say top 3. I'll say my 3 biggest draft bust. Number 1, R.J. Soward. Number 2, Derek Harvey. Number 3, Justin Blackmon. I've mentioned some more names, but they're going to be after the 3 biggest. Whenever we may actually come up with a top 10 or a bottom 10 or just the 10 biggest draft bust in Jaguars history is what I'm trying to say. Training camp is here, and this team has a shot to be good. This offensive line's got to get healthy. This kind of concerns me here early in training camp. The offensive line, it's not just 1 or 2 guys. It's as many as 4 guys or more that have been hurt or are hurt. The only good thing I can think that comes out of this is a guy like Wyatt Millam gets a chance to play more in the preseason. And some of these guys may have to play more than a quarter or 2 because of the numbers. There's going to be some guys getting out there at the offensive line that we've never even heard of. But they'll be on the 90-man roster, what goes on during training camp. So we'll see what happens. But the O-line kind of concerns me. The Jags are deep at defensive back. They're deep at wide receiver. I love the wide receiver group. I love the defensive back group. And I think Ventrell Miller could have a breakout season at linebacker for the Jaguars in his 4th season. Really a contract year for him. He wears number 51, like Kevin Hardy did for the Jaguars, who was one of the better Jaguars draft picks. And Dick Butkus wore 51, right? And Kevin Hardy played at Illinois. Of course, number 51, Ventrell Miller played at Florida, linebacker. I do think he has a shot to have a breakout season. You know why the reason why I like, let me make sure I get my names right here. The reason why I like Bentrell Miller so much is the effort. Great effort. Big heart. Leadership ability. But tremendous effort, and he's a hard hitter. He's a hard hitter at linebacker. Can this Jaguars team make it deep in the playoffs? Well, we've been talking about that. The key thing to me, what's going to put the Jaguars over the top is going to be the big money players. Will they come through? Will they be better than their opponents who are going to be the big money players that are their opponents in the playoffs? And personally, I don't think the Jaguars win 13 games. I think you're looking at a team that might win 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, but still maybe win the division by one game over Houston or whoever the second place team is. Not as many wins as last year, perhaps, but still a winning season, a chance to win the division, and perhaps go deeper in the playoffs than they did last year. And I think this team, I think they got as good a shot as any to make it to the AFC title and maybe for the first time ever win that Lamar Hunt trophy. I'm Scott with the Teal Shirt Report podcast. We've been brought to you by the MadMaxMix.weebly.com. Check out Mad Max's show on Wednesday nights. JC's in the pub on Thursday nights at LakeUpallahits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. And remember, for your real estate needs in North Florida and surrounding areas, it's Salsa Realty and Capital. Whether it's home, residential, commercial, or business real estate, Salsa Realty and Capital with Larry Salser. There's a link for Salsa Realty and Capital on our homepage at bigjreport.com. You'll find links to the internet radio shows like the madmaxmix.weebly.com. You'll find those links near the concert areas in the Neighbors 2 section. There's also an article about Mad Max in the Outside the Box section and a link to the show in the Outside the Box section for the madmaxmix.weebly.com on Wednesday nights. JC's show is the very next night, this and each Thursday night. JC in the pub, great show. Boy, New York Joe was getting some shout-outs from JC on Thursday night of last week. And the shows continue this week. Mad Max on Wednesday night with the madmaxmix.weebly.com. Check out the shows. Get your request in. Mad Max will give you his phone number somewhere during the early part of the show. JC's got a new chat box set up for his show In the Pub with JC this coming Thursday night. LakeUpallahits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. Check out JC in the pub this and each Thursday night at LakeUpallahits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. We've been produced by executive producer JC. Also want to thank Alex Nunry. John Gaylor, thank you so much for the messaging we've been doing about the Jaguars. Every week we get into the subjects and the topics. Excuse me, we talked about draft bust, and John Gaylor brought some names up. But I think I got it down. At least I got the three biggest draft busts in Jaguars history. If you disagree with me, let me know. But I've got it down to R.J. Soward at number 1, Derek Harvey at number 2, and number 3, Justin Blackmon. I did some more research on Blackmon, and when I looked at Blackman's career stats, it disappointed me even more about his career or lack of a career and what could have been. I'm Scott with the Teal Shirt Report podcast. That's going to do it for today. Episode show number 40. I know we'll have a 48 because we're going to try to salute some number 40 guys on the next podcast. You guys have a great day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being with us. The coffee was was great coffee, boy. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Teal Shirt Report podcast. Tell a friend about the podcast. We've got over, we've got over 2,000 subscribers. Let's get that list growing even more. And you guys have a great day. Thank you for listening and watching the Teal Shirt Report podcast on this Tuesday, August the 11th, on a Teal Tuesday. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Scott, for the Teal Shirt Report podcast. And hey, I'm out. Show number 40, about 40 minutes long. We'll try to shorten it next go around. Thank you.